Good evening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to IBSI's weekly forum on Africa, Israel, and Black America. I am your host, Joshua Washington, the executive director of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. And I haven't been with you for a little bit, so I'm happy to be back. You've seen my lovely co-host, Olga Mishoy Washington, and Chief Speakers Bureau, and our board member. You've also seen our founder and CEO, Pastor Demisani Washington, lead these past few weeks, which they do it from time to time. But I also have been a little bit out of commission. I was in California for a couple of weeks on tour. That's a kind of a journey and a story in itself. The shows were successful. One in particular had a little bit of protesting, and some people had requested ticket refunds because of my views, and Jadabi hates Palestinians, and we don't like his stance on Gaza, whatever. That show in particular still did very well. We still filled up the entire house, and we had an amazing time. It was probably the best show on the whole tour. So all that stuff went really well. Super excited to be back, and we have quite a bit of things to get into today. It's funny. I was talking with Olga, my wife, who just went out of town. And one of the things that I said to her was she felt like last week or the week before, some of the topics she covered, she felt like I would be more comfortable covering them. And I said, well, that's funny because some of the topics I'm covering today, I feel like you would be more comfortable covering them. So definitely, it's just some things that we have to just talk about some things today. And so we're going to get right into it. First of all, visit our website. If you're watching us for the first time, go to IBSI.org, and you can find us anywhere, everywhere. Look at all of our content, see the things that we've been posting and sharing. We have a new video out, and you'll see that on there as well, called Zionism and Pan-Africanism. It's all over YouTube and everything. Really excited to unveil that and have that out. As a matter of fact, I should have showed that video to you now, but you can go to IBSI.org, or you can find us on YouTube. And check out that video. It features one of our IBSI ambassadors, Rabbi Yaakov Hadani, and it's amazing, chock full of information. It's so great. Zionism and Pan-Africanism. So check out our latest video. Share it with everybody you know. Share it. You can visit us on Substack, ibsi.substack.com, and check out our latest articles. We will have some more podcast episodes coming out soon. And we have other premium content as well. Please become a premium subscriber, and that will help us that just continues to bring funds into IBSI and allow us to do what we're doing. Also, become a legacy builder. If you are not a legacy builder, if you haven't even donated to IBSI, especially if you only donated once or twice, you can go to ibsi.org/donate, and you can set up a monthly amount that you can give to IBSI. A monthly amount, I always encourage people to give at least $18 a month, because 18 is a great number. That's the number of life. $18 a month, and you could do that, and that would be really amazing. We would love that. Every monthly donation is so crucial. It's so vital to what we do. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys for those who have been doing it. Some people have started off with a very low amount, I think like $10, $12, and now they're able to give closer to $50 to $100 a month, and that's awesome. So you can start with whatever you can do, and you can do that. You can also text IBSI to 53555, and you can do that to donate. So text IBSI to the number 53555, and then you can set up the amount you want to give. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Lastly, every third Thursday of the month, our CEO and founder hosts what's called IBSI Pastors Presents, and that is happening on the third Thursday of this month, whatever the third Thursday is of May. That is what we hosted, which would be May the 16th. So that's this coming Thursday, actually. Our CEO and founder will be hosting the monthly IBSI Pastors Presents. It's if you enjoy watching him on the forums, if you enjoyed watching him, he definitely this even goes deeper. So if you're a pastor, if you're a minister, and you want to be a part of this and engage and be able to ask questions and have discussions with our CEO and founder, Pastor Dumisani Washington, you can do that here. So join our mailing list and for more information on that. All right. We got something. Oh, first of all, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. To As the sun is setting here on the East Coast, I know it's already really really early morning in Israel now, but it is the start of Yom HaZikaron. Yom HaZmaut. Yom HaZikaron was yesterday. Yom HaZmaut is we're starting now Israel's Independence Day. Yom HaZikaron is was started sundown yesterday, and that was to honor the Israeli fallen soldiers, okay, and victims of terrorism. It's very especially poignant now, obviously, with hostages that are still in Gaza, and people who will people who have been murdered brutally by Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and other terrorists from Gaza on October the 7th. There's still people that we're not even sure if they're alive or not. So it's a very sobering time. Yom HaZmaut is supposed to be a huge celebration. I know that, one thing we know about our Jewish brothers and sisters is that even in sorrow, there will be joy, there will be celebration. It's just a very heavy time now. As a matter of fact, I remember my very first trip to Israel. I took 2 trips to Israel in 2016. My very first trip to Israel in 2016 was with a musical group called Wild Branches, and with shout out to Uncle Victor Sersky and his group, and he he merged his group with mine and my dad's group, I should say, the Hebrew Project, and so we did some stuff together, some songs from Wild Branches, some songs from the Hebrew Project, and our first night there, I think I forgot that it was Yom HaZmaut, or that it was starting that evening. I thought I was okay. I think it was our second night, maybe. We got to the hotel and I was like, I'm doing fine. And I ate some dinner and I went up to my hotel room, and I was just going to go up to my hotel room to like take a shower and change my clothes and then come back down and kind of like walk around the hotel. Right. And I went upstairs, and that's the only thing I remember, because next thing I knew, I woke up. I was lying in bed. It was 4 in the morning, maybe 3 in the morning. And I just heard this loud music and celebration outside. And I said, what in the world is, first of all, I'm like, where am I? What time is it? And once I kind of came to, I looked out my window and I was like, I got to see what's going on. I went downstairs, went out the hotel, and for blocks and blocks and blocks, there was just celebration. Their families, their children. I mean, it wasn't I thought it was like, oh, these young kids, maybe it's like this huge college party, maybe there's a school nearby. No. Families, mothers, fathers, children, grandparents, people were up celebrating. There was music, and I thought it was recorded. It was a recording. It was actually like a block party. There was live music happening in the middle of the street. We were in Tiberias, and I was like, whoa. And I'll never forget it. I was like, this is my first, maybe, like I said, maybe the second night in Israel, but my first like full night in Israel. And that was very special to me, to be there on that day, right? And so, yeah, it's like I said before, it's even more sobering now, that with the backdrop of everything. But rest assured, Israel is commemorating still. The Israeli people still live, and they will continue to live. And as long as they live, they will celebrate the things that need to be celebrated. So on behalf of IBSI and all of us, we're praying for you, our Israeli brothers and sisters. We're wishing you still a good Yom HaZmaut, and that, again, that the hostages are returned, and that Hamas is and all of Israel's enemies. So Hezbollah to the north, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the mullahs in Iran, Qatar, the leaders who seek to destroy Israel are ultimately destroyed. So, starting off with that, and I want to now kind of push forward a little bit. So, the United Nations. Now, we've been following this for a while. I'm not going to stay too long on this because we kind of know what's been going on. We've seen this pattern happen many wars that Hamas has waged against Israel before, but now that more eyes are on this, we're seeing this more, and we're going to talk about it more. So the United Nations on May the 6th had reported that 34,735 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza, including over 9,500 women and over 14,000 children, right? 2 days after that, on May the 8th, the UN published data showing that actually it's about 34,000, still about 34,000, but they slashed the civilian casualty count in half. Now, this also corroborates what Hamas said. Hamas themselves admitted a couple weeks ago that, our numbers might be a little high. Tablet Magazine put out an article saying there's no way that the casualty count can be that ridiculously high. And yet, what you have, mainstream media, all the way up to the president of the United States, President Biden, has even cited the number. The damage has been done, but see, the problem is, you have useful idiots, and then you have people who have an agenda, and they work very well together, right? You have useful idiots who want to believe a certain thing, and you have the people with an agenda who feed them exactly what they want to believe, and then you have this. So now it doesn't matter that this report came out. It doesn't matter that it's probably still an exaggeration. It doesn't matter that Hamas always inflates numbers. People are going to believe what they want to believe. But the UN itself said, hey, by the way, we know that the numbers that we reported and that we've been citing have been used by entire countries and entire governments and mainstream news and activists all over the world to prove that Israel is quote unquote committing genocide. But even with these current numbers, or with the fake numbers, the ratio still wasn't that off from any kind of ratio in war, right? Meaning ratio of civilian casualties to combatant casualties. But now these numbers that are closer to being accurate literally puts Israel way in front as the by far the best army, the best military in the world in terms of the least amount of civilian casualties. It's just the truth. It's just the truth. It's just the numbers. You could say, oh, does it, every death is tragic. Every death is tragic. But you can't, if Israel's committing genocide, then literally everyone is. Then let's talk about how Hamas committed a genocide. Let's talk about, that just doesn't make any sense, right? The numbers say what the numbers say. So the UN came out and said, oh, actually, it's about half that. It's probably less. In 2021, Hamas put out a collage of photos. And the collage of photos were pictures of children that are victims of children that were murdered by the Israeli government. New York Times took that collage and published it. Then it came out that a lot of those pictures of those kids were either not dead, not from Gaza, or were not killed by Israel. Right? You had pictures of kids who were like child actors from another Arab country, who were not dead. You had pictures of kids who maybe they were from Gaza, but they weren't dead, or they were killed by something else. You have pictures of kids who are still alive. Random, like I said, is Arab kids from different countries, maybe from the U.S. It's just so much so that the New York Times had to take it down. Here's my question then, and this actually goes into our other point in just a moment. Why do we keep taking information from Gaza's health ministry, who is just Hamas? Why do we keep taking these reports as gospel? Right? Because we want to. Why did Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk jump on Israel when they thought Israel bombed a church? because they wanted to believe that Israel bombed the church. Because when the information came out that they did it and the church was still standing, what did they do? They did nothing. That's because they wanted to believe that Israel bombed the church. When it turned out that they didn't, they no, it doesn't fit, doesn't suit my needs anymore. So I'm moving on. Why did everyone get up in arms when they thought Israel destroyed a hospital? And then because they wanted to believe it. When it turned out Israel did not bomb the hospital, but it was a parking lot of the hospital, and the missile wasn't even from the IDF, but Palestinian Islamic Jihad, a missile that went rogue, everyone just moved on. Why? Because it satisfied them to cry their tears and say, oh, Israel in the hospital, and the people. It wasn't about justice. It was about the feels. That's what it's about. So, but when it comes to the mainstream media like New York Times, why do they do it? Because the people who work for New York Times also have an agenda. I'm not saying everyone who works at New York Times does, but enough employees do for it to make this kind of an impact. There's no way. Your job is to tell people what's happening. Your job is the news. Your job is to look at something and say, this happened. If you get your information, if it's almost fool me once, fool me twice, right? If you get your information from the Gaza Health Ministry thinking that it's actually a health ministry, and then the news comes out that, oh, it's just Hamas. Oh, okay, wow. And that becomes public knowledge. Journalistic integrity would dictate that you would not do that again. You wouldn't go out again and reach out to the same entity and say, hey, Gaza Health Ministry, what's the casualty count now for this war? Tell us. Because you go, no, we found out that the fact that NPR, CNN, BBC, ABC, all the other news, the fact that they keep citing Gaza Health Ministry's numbers, that means something nefarious for them. That means their higher ups, their people are saying, no, take these numbers as facts and publish them. And I guarantee you, even though this report now is out by the UN, you're going to see the mainstream news still cite the numbers as if they're dastardly, without any context, without any, like we talked about the ratio of combatant civilians, without even citing the fact that the UN actually reported that they overblew the numbers. No. It's the same thing. It's the same thing we talked about with police killings. This was the same thing that was going on. And I'm going to go backwards for a little bit to 2016, 2017, 2018, 2020, when whether it was Sandra Bland, whether it was Alton Sterling, whether it was George Floyd, whether it was any of the, and we could take it case by case, right? But what I'm saying is, when that was a big issue in the United States, police killings of unarmed Black men and women, one of the things that some of us were trying to point out was that the numbers do not support what people were calling open season on Black people. You had people who were economists, who were statistics experts, statisticians, however you say it. You had people who were just about the numbers saying, what you're saying doesn't reflect reality. Roland Fryer was an economist from Harvard who did the famous research about that exactly that. He wanted to actually show how bad it was. And after he did his research, he found, no, the numbers don't actually support it being open season on Black people. He found some discrepancies in terms of police handling of Black men. Like there might, when it comes to maybe fisticuffs or something, that's a little bit different. But what he found is that per capita, white men were actually shot unarmed more than Black men. And I say per capita, people go, oh, there are more white men. No. Percentage wise, meaning the percentage of white men who were shot and killed by police officers unarmed were higher than Black men. Why am I bringing all this up? Because that's important. Because context is important. When he posted the research, people blasted him for it, in the public space and at Harvard. That's why he eventually got blackballed and then kicked out of Harvard. They tried to revoke his tenure. The whole thing with Claudine Gay, when we talked about her, she was one of the ones leading the charge to get him out of Harvard for a lot of his research, but primarily because of that one. And he said, I'm just following the numbers. I'm just doing I'm literally just, I thought that's what we were supposed to be doing. Please excuse me. Sorry, the lamp fell over a little bit. He said, I'm just following the numbers. What are you doing? I'm just following what the numbers say. The numbers are saying that that does not support that. But why was everyone caught up? Because of social media, because of the power of the television, social media, and every time, and every mainstream news source knew what they were doing. Every time they showed the video of Eric Gardner being choked to death, saying "I can't breathe," they knew it was like it was trauma porn. They knew they were instilling more fear into the Black community. So you look at that and you say, "That's going to happen to me." I knew the numbers and I knew the stats. And I remember one time I was pulled over in Roseville. I was driving, it was back when we lived in California. I was driving up north and a police officer was tailing me for a long time. I didn't know why. I thought maybe my my tail light was out. Maybe I don't know, maybe the license plate expired and I didn't realize, but I wasn't speeding because I knew the police officer was there. And he was tailing me. I was sitting there going, okay, I don't know what's going on. I'm just keep normal for maybe 5-6 minutes. Eventually turned on the siren, pulled me over, and accused me of speeding. Respectfully said, "Officer, no, I wasn't. I was going 65. And he cussed me out, and he eventually just left, got in his car, and drove off. Didn't give me a ticket, nothing. And I knew the stats, but in that moment, I was like, wow, I didn't realize how that fear porn and trauma porn actually got a little bit into my psyche as well. Because when that happened, I said, is this it for me? They know what they're doing when they do that. And then they'll say, this many Black men were shot and killed by police officers this year. 50 something Black men in 2018 were shot and killed by police officers unarmed. You go, okay. Oh my gosh, that's so many people. 58. Oh, that's 65. Oh my goodness. And of course, any thinking person will go, okay, you can't just give me a number and that's it. 65 out of how many encounters? How does that compare to other ethnic groups? Is that low? Is that high? Like, you can't just say 106 Black men were shot unarmed in 2020 in America by police officers. Okay, 120, based on how many people live in the US, that seems a little bit low to me. It seems kind of low. So I don't understand, but what does that mean? What does 120 mean? What does 65 mean? What does 28 mean? Can we look at can we look at the percentage? Can we look at what it was last year? Can we look at but everyone took it like it was candy. Insert Black Lives Matter, taking all that. And a lot of our friends, a lot of our partners, a lot of our friends in the pro-Israel space took the bait. But now that exact same thinking is going on and continues to go on every single time Israel is at war. Every single time Hamas wages war on Israel, that's what happens. So they say, oh, 30,000 pounds. Oh my gosh, 30,000. That's terrible. Again, okay, yes, people die in war, and that's terrible. What does that 30,000 mean? How many of those 30,000 are militants? How many of those are civilians? And what's the comparison from before? What's the percentage of the population? How does that compare to other wars? Like, you can't just give me a number and then, but that's people take the number and they go, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And that's going to continue to happen. You guys, as long as we support this BS way of looking at data for other groups, we can continue to expect it when it doesn't benefit us. We can continue to expect it to bite us in the behind. That's it. Because the numbers are numbers, and that's it. The numbers don't lie. So what we're seeing now is exactly the pattern is what we've seen before. So now the retraction comes out, or the UN says, "Oh, oops, sorry. By the way, we overblew the numbers." No one really sees that. Of course, we're posting all over the place. No one's really going to report on that. We're going to move on. And even the people who see it, they're going to go, "Oh, that's still a high number. That no one should be dead." Like, okay, it's a war. It's a war that Hamas, when Hamas did what it did on October 7th, among other things, it declared war. Hamas declared war. So Israel's in a war, and there are casualties in war. It's terrible, it's tragic, but if it is something that makes it no one should be dead, okay, then you need to address the fact that this war was started by the people who represent the people who you said you care about. Maybe say something about those people. Or shut up. I mean, that's another thought. You could just be quiet, right? Like, because you're not really adding anything productive to this conversation. Anyway, before I move on, I did say this in the beginning. I want to change it. I kept saying Thursday. Our CEO and founders IBSI pastors event is every third Tuesday of the month. Every third Tuesday. This next one is May the 21st. So I just wanted to make that correction for those who are watching now. It's not every third Thursday, every third Tuesday. So make sure you guys switch that. So if you're a pastor or minister watching this, please make sure you change that in your calendars. I told you the wrong thing. Every third Tuesday. Okay. So have the numbers game played on this. Now, this is the part where I was telling my wife today that I would have loved to have her, but she is in Atlanta right now for another event that she is speaking at, and it's everything that we're doing right now is kind of like everything's always of vital importance, and so but I'm going to talk about this, and maybe she'll pick it up a couple weeks from now. So let's talk about what happened these past couple days, May 10th through May 12th. It was the event was the first ever global anti-apartheid conference on Palestine. This was put on by a group called the South African Anti-Apartheid Steering Committee, and they wrote a declaration, called the Johannesburg Declaration on Israel's Settler Colonialism, Apartheid, and Genocide towards a global anti-apartheid movement for Palestine. They hosted this event, and so, we have the program here. They had different speakers, people from the political space, activists, anti-Israel activists. They had people telling their personal stories about how the war has affected their family and how Israel's just so evil and awful. And you had legal people come up and talk about the legal and political narrative, and that we have to dismantle Israel colonialism and apartheid. And then you had these different BDS training things. You had interfaith activities. You had a workshop called Changing the Narrative. And you had these different Arab speakers, Arab Palestinian speakers. As a matter of fact, as I was looking through the program, I'm looking at all these last names, and I was like, and first names too. And I'm like, I don't really see a lot of South African names on here, if any. Countering Christian Zionism, right? I'm looking, I'm like, these are all Arab names. These are all, and again, so you guys, ladies and gentlemen, so let's just play a critical thinking game just for a moment, okay? There's a YouTube video, and I'm not going to, what I was going to do, but I don't want to give it any more airtime. But I will make sure that our producer puts it in the chat for you so you can see it for yourself. Excuse me, these allergies are getting to me. There's a video, just a clip. It's a news report. It's an interview on this conference that's happening, right? And in the interview, it's all in South Africa. The South African reporter is interviewing the South African man about the conference and why should we stand against Israel and all that stuff, right? And in the video, he's sharing all the anti-Israel talking points, right? And like, so you can watch it for yourself. I've just sent it to our producer, so she'll put it in the comments for you to click on it and watch it. All this stuff, right? It's apartheid, it's genocide, and blah, 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 all the lies, all the stuff. What I found interesting when I watched the video, I checked out the comments. There's only about right now 18 comments. You guys, all of the comments except for a couple who responded to the comments, all the comments are negative, meaning against the video. It's just only 18 comments, but these are different South African accounts and some other people. Basically, some of them are very much just strongly Zionist because that is South Africa. And the majority of Africans are Christian and very proud and strong Zionists. We even had our friend, former slave Simon Dang from Sudan, He wrote an article, we talked about it before, called "First They Came for My People, Then They Came for the Jews." His people are still very much enslaved in South Sudan, but he talks about how Sudanese people are they very much identify with the Israeli people. After they come for the Saturday, first the Saturday people, then the Sunday people. That's what the enemies of Israel say. So they see Christians as their enemies as well, but they just see them as secondary. They have to take care of the Jews first, and they'll get to the Christians. Look at all the countries that have eventually expelled the Jews. The Christians are being persecuted. Iran, Jews were expelled, Jews were killed, Jews had to flee. Now there's like a tiny Jewish population kind of underground in Iran, but it's mostly Christian now, and they're being persecuted. Iraq, same thing. It's all over the place, guys. So all the comments on there are basically either saying we stand with Israel, or they're just saying, can we please clean up our own country first? I mean, my goodness, why are we all the way over in what's happening in Gaza? Like, why? We have so many life-threatening, dire issues of deep corruption, exploitation, load shedding. For those who aren't South African, load shedding are scheduled blackouts. Just imagine every day you're in your house, in your area, within a however many mile radius, the power goes out for 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours at a time, sometimes 4 hours at a time. You have nothing. For that much time, there's no power at all anywhere. And depending on how bad it gets, it could be up to 6 hours at a time. It could be twice a day. You have all that kind of, not because there's no power in South Africa, but because leaders are selling their people out and letting other people access the natural resources that they have. That's what's happening. So you have people who are angry saying, why are we even focused on Israel? And I remember talking to my friend about this, a businessman from South Africa, and he said, what is the big deal? Because so just get this picture. He is a Black South African, very successful businessman. He sees some of this political stuff about Israel going on in South Africa, and he says, I'm confused. Most of us don't even care about Israel. Why is this like on the mainstream news every day? He said, when it comes to modern day Israel, like what's happening on the ground and the day-to-day politics and the conflict, he said, most South Africans don't care. We not in a bad way. We have our own problems. So he even looks at the news and goes, I don't get why this is like a huge talking point. And that's because, and I said this in a tweet earlier, if there is any kind of quote unquote solidarity between South Africans and the people of Gaza, is that their leaders are not representing them. And even then, it's a little shaky for the people of Gaza, because we know that some of the hostages were taken by just regular Gazan civilians. But if there is any kind of anything, it's that a lot of Gazans are fed up with Hamas. A lot of South Africans are fed up with, and that's pretty much where it stops. And again, even then, a lot of people in Gaza, they don't really have love for Israel. They're just fed up with Hamas. The South African people are fed up with their leadership, and by and large, love Israel. Stands with Israel, prays for Israel. When the ANC took Israel to the International Court of Justice, there were churches all over South Africa that held prayer conferences or times of prayer just to repent and ask God for forgiveness for their government, because they knew that their government was inviting a curse onto the country. That's what we are taught as Christians, and that's what Reverend Kenneth Mitchell said when he addressed the ANC. He said, "You've invited a curse unto yourself, and you're going to get it." That's what he says right to their faces in Parliament. So that was a little bit warming to see in the comment section that the average everyday South African is like, this is not. Even if we agreed with you, even if we agreed that Israel was committing a genocide, which is not, right? Even if we were to go along with that, still, why are we focused on that place? Because Gaza is not even a country, right? There is no country called Palestine. Why are we even focused on this region when we have so many problems here? And better yet, here's the other thing. Of all the problems going on the continent of Africa in general, right? We can, like, when it comes to Africans, right? You have your country, but you also consider yourself a son or daughter of Africa, right? We talk about how we're connected and one Africa and all that kind of stuff. And you speak all that jargon, yet you spend your time when it comes to talking about foreign issues, not talking about the slavery in Sudan, not talking about the slavery of your brothers and sisters to the north, basically Sudan, Libya, Nigeria, Mauritania, Algeria. You don't speak about the sex slaves, the the slave trading that's going on, where you can buy a healthy Nigerian man for $200 or less, right? You're not talking about this kind of stuff that's going. You're not talking about the piles of dead bodies of dead children on top of each other in Sudan, the genocide that's going on in Nigeria of Christians and Igbo. No, you want to spend your time, the time that you take speaking about foreign issues, you want to talk about Israel and Gaza? Really? You guys, let's just be critical for a second. Why else? Why? And they have their talking points. When people ask them, why the the Palestinian people? Well, we're all Palestinian when it comes to this, and we have to stand up, and we don't have to be Arab, we don't have to be Palestinian to call this out. Okay, fine. But here's the thing: you are African, and there are Africans suffering in your country and in the countries around you. You just skip over all your brothers and sisters who call themselves African like you, and you hop on over to Gaza. Something nefarious is going on. Something nefarious is going on, you guys. Even if you don't want to believe me, that, because by the way, and we have this information, we know that at this conference, members of Hamas were in attendance. Yes, you heard me right. So at this, at the Global Anti-Apartheid Conference on Palestine, of the many people who were in attendance were Hamas. Now, I just got through telling you on the program, and I might have missed a couple, I did not see one South African looking name on the program at all. Saleh Hijazi. That's not South African. That's Arab. Rami Abdo. Maybe. You have Zarifa Baroud. No, that's Arab. Raji Sohrani. That's Arab. All of the speakers on here are Arab speakers. You have members of Hamas in attendance. Now, come on, you guys. And now let's connect some more dots. Hamas is worth billions. Iran pumps billions into Hamas. Our tax dollars go to Hamas. They have tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars set aside just for their propaganda machine. You mean to tell me that they don't have their tentacles in this? They're there. How in the world is a terrorist entity, a terrorist organization like Hamas, whose brothers across the African continent are enslaving Africans to this day, how are they able to just have access into South Africa and put on this kind of conference and have these South African leaders on the news talking about the genocide? They're paying them. They're giving them money. And these leaders are taking it. These same corrupt leaders who take these big old, ginormous loans from China that they can't pay back, and then wind up having to give their infrastructure as collateral. Those are the same. Of course, they're going to take money from Hamas. It's money, of course. You mean to tell me that when I become a parliament member, I can get enough money to buy myself a few Rolls Royces and have a super nice house and parade myself around and be the king of everything in my area, and I don't have to really do anything? You'll take care of everything? Let's do it. I'm going to echo the words of my father-in-law, Reverend Kenneth Mishwe. South African leaders, you're continuing to invite and curse on yourself. When it comes to our leaders here in America, same exact thing. And I'm working on an article now that's going to be published on our Substack in a couple of days. We talked about it before. There's a part 1 to the article called "What if Israel's Friends Are Israel's Enemies?" So I'm working on a part 2 to that right now, because we, as the United States, continue to pop off out the mouth. We're talking out of both sides of our neck. Okay, we're saying on one side, we're saying we stand with Israel, we love Israel, Am Israel High, and then on the other side, we're releasing sanctions on Iran. We're telling Israel, you can't go into Rafah, or we're not going to. We're refusing ammunitions to Israel that we promised them they could have when they spend the aid that we give them on us. We're saying, no, sorry, we're not giving you arms for this fight. That's not a country that stands with Israel, you guys. That's not a country who has some things confused. That's a country that stands against Israel. And our duality is going to be worse for us than it's going to be for our South African neighbors. Why? Because at least they're just being honest. They're saying, look, we stand with Palestine, and Israel's and this is where we are, right? They're wrong, but at least they're honestly standing where they're standing. We're sitting there waving the Israeli flag with the American flag, talking about Am Yisrael High, and I'll say it again. A lot of our, there's not. A lot of pros, even other pro-Israel organizations, aren't calling out what needs to be called out when it needs to be called out, and we've outlined that in our articles and all that stuff. So I'm not going to get into that again today. What I'm saying is, though, we have a very brutal road ahead of us because we keep saying, and some of us even think that we are doing good things for Israel when we're cutting them from under. So, in response to this conference that's happening, or that happened, there is a letter that is continuing to get, more and more signatories on it, just from religious leaders in South Africa, pastors and ministers, basically calling for President Ramaphosa and the ANC to not say anything or do anything at this conference that would continue to exacerbate tensions. Again, this just reflects that the leaders don't represent their people. Anyone who watches these videos and thinks that, wow, South Africa must hate Israel, both people who are pro-Israel, people who are neutral, and people who are anti-Israel, you're kind of detached from South Africa. Now, I live in America, right? I'm not saying, oh, I know more than you. What I'm saying is, though, that you are disconnected from reality, the reality on the South African ground, if you think that South Africa hates Israel, especially if you're in the pro-Israel space. I know the propaganda is intense and it's tough, but you got to put on your big boy shorts and do the work, do the research, dig in the mud a little bit, figure out what's really going on, ask the people that you can ask. Don't just use Black South African voices to say I love Israel and then put them back over there in the Black person corner and you do your thing. Actually get what these people are thinking in their minds and what they're saying to their friends and to their congregants, right? Because what you'll find is the leaders do not represent their people. The leaders do not represent their people. And that's an age-old thing. Don't get caught up in the mess. Don't get caught up in the mess. Don't go, well, so why do they keep voting for ANC? Don't make me get into why do some of y'all keep voting for the leaders that you vote for, even though they continue to show you they don't have your interests at heart. I'm just saying, okay? If we're going to go there, let's go there. Why do Black people keep 95%? Why do Jewish people keep voting 9%? Okay, let's not go there. ANC, back in its day, has done a lot of things for the people, and there's some things that are still attached there for the people getting South Africa out of apartheid, right? So it's not going to just be an overnight thing. Most South Africans, Israel's not their deal breaker issue. There are other things going on. And even then, there's a shift happening. There's an election coming up in just a few days this month in South Africa. That could be a tipping point for South Africa. If you pray for South Africa, because people are fed up for many, many other reasons. You have to understand what's going on the ground. You have to at least have some sort of knowledge of what's happening on the ground so you don't get caught up in the BS. That one was just an extra thing for free. Shout out to Mr. Lonnie Poindexter, sir. It's good to see you on here. I see your comment here. It says, as my dear dad, and if you guys put that comment up there, as my dear old dad taught me, follow the money, son, learn the true motivations of a person, place, or thing. They are getting paid to trash Israel. Absolutely. Some of the accusations that get thrown around at us, and when I say us, I mean us at IBSI, us as Black people, are that, we're on the payroll of whatever. I'm like, I still haven't seen my check. Like, if we're on a payroll, I still haven't, first of all. But secondly, some of them are saying that because they are on Hamas's payroll. Hamas has an entire wing of the organization dedicated to propaganda, dedicated to disinformation. Young millennials and Gen Zers who are, a mother from Gaza said this: if you're not employed by Hamas, you're out of a job. The only other job that Gazans had a chance of having was working in the West Bank, working in Judea, Samaria, and Israel. That got squashed when some of those employees turned out, for the past 2 years, they were working there and befriending Israelis to get information on them to give them to Hamas. There were Israelis, I know Israelis who said, man, I would drive my friend from Gaza to a health what do you call it? A health center in Israel, and demand that she got health care so that she could whatever was going on with her, only to find that she this whole time was getting information on me, and she was a part of October 7th. Yeah, we have stories like that all over the place. So, um, you have that, right? So any other chance of a job outside of that that's been squashed for now, it's just working for Hamas. And this mother in Gaza said, "If you don't work for Hamas, you're broke." So you have these young guys, my age and younger, girls too, who travel the world, who have these Instagram accounts with 1.5 million followers. And if you notice for some these accounts, they always seem to post these really just high definition 4K videos, these perfect collages of, oh, look at the suffering and look at the death and look at that's propaganda. I feel like my son Judah, we recorded him saying that one time. That's propaganda. That's propaganda. That's how propaganda works, you guys. Just because it's shiny and it's 4K doesn't mean that it's true. Just because a person's saying it is passionate and tears come out of their eyes doesn't mean that it's true. Just because someone's loved one actually was destroyed during a bombing or under rubble doesn't mean that Israel's just trying to kill people, right? They can come to you and cry, and that's fine. But again, the facts don't reflect what their conclusion is. And if you don't have the heart to acknowledge that and to say that, that's fine. But don't step into this fight and then capitulate to BS. We don't need any more capitulation to evil. That's already happening. I truly have no doubt that the ANC is funded by Iran. They recently came into some money, but yeah, to pay off their debt. No. I mean, it's not even a secret. This stuff is sometimes in the U.S. things can kind of be a little bit on the under. No, it's not even a secret. The mullahs are friends. Like I said, Hamas. This is not the first time Hamas has been at a South African hosted event. They've been going to the parliament for years. My wife was telling me about that. There are videos of them just walking into. No, this is money. This is a money thing. Ay. Wow, guys. Yeah, and who do you think is funding the Hamas protesters? In the UK and London, there were hundreds of thousands of protesters. All of my friend from the UK, she's Jewish. She was telling me this. She does our when my band and I went to Paris. She met us in Paris and did a photo shoot for us. She's a professional photographer. And she was like, it was so scary. I'm like, I couldn't go out in public I'm still scared to go out in public in the UK because it was such a huge display. That's not a grassroots movement. That's money. Someone has some serious money behind this. And we have to attack them at their pocketbooks, you guys. We got it. But anyway, that's a different thing. And I'll let my co-host talk about that when she's here next, because she's been employing some strategies that I think are actually going to attack the issue at its root. But yes, you guys, it's and I can't kind of stress this enough. And it's just curious to me when a country, especially a country like South Africa or a country, because you have to use your brain, right? South Africa is where the term apartheid was coined. When you think South Africa, you think the struggle for freedom. Of course, the propagandists are going to pull from them and hijack their story because they don't have their own story. That's the whole point. If you keep having to hijack other people, see, the Black Civil Rights Movement, it was its own movement. The struggle against apartheid was its own movement. And there were overlaps, right? There was an admiration. There was Arthur Ashe went to South Africa to play tennis. And at first he wasn't allowed to because of the apartheid government. And because he was against apartheid in South Africa. And so they wouldn't let him. And he had some really nasty things to say about the National Party at the time. And so there was this camaraderie, especially right to the end of apartheid in South Africa from 90 to about 94. And there was a camaraderie, right? There was a I see you, you see us. It wasn't a what's the word? It wasn't a hijacking. It was we're going through our mess, you're going through your mess. In some ways there's a lot of similarities, but in other ways there's some things that are much more systematic on your end when it comes to geography and XYZ and art, right? But it wasn't oh, this is apartheid America. I'm sure some people have said that, but the reason why I didn't take off is because we already had our own words, because we had our own struggle. If you have to continue to use other people's words and other people's struggles and not have any of your own, it's an indicator that maybe your movement is fake. So when you see South Africa saying all these things about Israel, but you see the people of South Africa not having any of this because, in their words, we have problems here at home. Let's clean up our own house first. There's a disconnect that's there, right? I'll tell you again. Julius Malema is the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters. It's a very radical party in South Africa, Communist Party, EFF. A couple of years ago, he made this declaration. He said, South Africans need to boycott Israeli goods. All foods that come from Israel, and any store that's owned by an Israeli or by Israel, we need to, not owned by Israel, but owned by Israelis, right? Any goods that are imported from Israel, boycott. And the overwhelming response that he got from South Africans, from the average South African, was, okay, are you going to feed us then? Julius, are you going to, where's our food going to come from? We are already suffering because people like you in parliament are doing nothing about food insecurity, nothing about our dwindling economy, nothing about our lack of power. Our food is rotting because of load shedding, all that stuff. And now you're telling us that we can't eat certain foods because it was made by a certain ethnic group of people or imported by a certain country. Yeah, how about this? How about screw you? No, seriously, their whole attitude wasn't even Am Israel High. Their attitude was, how are you going to tell us not to eat something else? I mean, are you serious? Are you kidding me right now? The people will pretty much tell you what's going on. The people will pretty much tell you what's going on, not the people that get platformed on the big, news cycles or whatever. The people on the ground will pretty much tell you what's really going on, you guys. And that's just the truth. All right. So thank you for tuning in. We have one more thing to talk about just real quick. Someone just shared this with me. I didn't even get a chance to read it all the way through because it was just shared with me almost just before we started setting up for this. But there was a pro-Israel event last week in Nashville, Tennessee, that was canceled because pro-Hamas just hooligans were so belligerent in that they forced the shutdown of this event in Nashville. It's a Jewish Christian event. Yeah, and again, you guys, we have to be stronger than ever. This is not a time to cower now. We have to be wise, but we have to stand up. We can't sit down. The strategies that are being employed, unfortunately, part of the reason why they're so strong, when I say the strategies, I'm talking about the strategies of these people who hate Israel. Part of the reason why they're strong is just because that's just the nature of evil. It's just evil, and evil is what evil does, and people who are evil, they practice it, right? But part of the reason why it's so, the other part of why it's so strong is because there were too many people who could have done something about it when it was small, who didn't do anything, right? We talked about the first Durban conference in 2001 when Israel was first called an apartheid state, and how the general response from people was, whatever, it's just a bunch of yahoos, it will never take root. And look where we are now, right? Now we're playing catch up with that. We talked about it with Columbia University in 2004. Charles Jacobs, our friend, produced a documentary called Columbia Unbecoming, showed it to a bunch of leaders and said, this is what's going on. And they said, we won't show this because it makes Muslims look bad. And we don't want to make Muslims look bad. And it's just 3 years after 9/11. And we just don't want to do that. So this thing festered and festered and festered. And now we're here where we are. We go, oh my gosh, what's going on at Columbia? What's going on at Duke? It's been happening. It's been happening since before 2004. And the people who were calling it out were being ignored, were even being attacked. I got to say this last thing because I was talking to our CEO and founder, my father the other day about Thomas Sowell and how there's, and I'm not going to name other names, but there were people who either were quiet when he was kind of being he wasn't literally a lone voice, right? There are other people who are calling things out. Like he is, Thomas Sowell today is kind of like a guru for a lot of people, left and right, right? Oh my gosh, so amazing. The thing is, when he was a younger man saying all this stuff, he would get ridiculed all the time. And there were people who agreed with him, who saw the value in what he was saying and actually agreed, but did not want to face the ridicule he faced. So they either kept quiet or, which is already bad enough, or they added to the ridicule being thrown onto him by heaping up rocks of their own and throwing them at him. They were part of the crowd that came against him. Now they're older and they're saying some of the same things that he's saying. It's kind of like that. There are people who've been calling out what's been going on campus since the 60s, 70s, 80s, and they're always a minority voice. People attack them, both people who are against them and people who are supposed to be on their team. They ignore them or they add to the chorus of attacking them. And then now we are where we are. Now everyone is shocked, raising money. Let's combat what's happening on our college campuses. Only problem is we've let this thing grow from a tiny little, seedling to a ginormous monster. And now we want to get out our military and fight the monster whose skin is all but impenetrable. But we really could have defeated this thing when it was a little bitty thing, right? Right now we have a difficult fight on our hands, but it's still not impossible for us to push back on these things. I think that some things that we've lost are just going to be lost forever, but there are still things that can be salvaged and there's still things that can be done. And we need to find ourselves doing them. If we're going to be in this space, we need to shed our fear of being hated. We need to shed our desire to be liked, and we need to speak the truth. Yeah, that's really what needs to be happening now. So again, if you've been tuning in this hour, this is our weekly forum on Africa, Israel, and Black America. We'll be here every Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I want to thank you guys for just coming in and commenting and engaging. It's always great to see you and to hear from you and to read your comments. Again, if you like what IBSI does, if you appreciate what we've been doing, and the past couple of weeks, some of our videos have gone a lot more viral than normal, which is good. Go to ibsi.org/donate and donate. Become a legacy builder. Give a monthly amount. We are, since 2013, the core of IBSI has been the family. My dad started IBSI, and then obviously my mom came along and helped him. Eventually, I came on as a special events coordinator. My younger sister came on as a graphics designer. My other younger sister came on as the one of the administrators. The other one's one of our cultural writers. And it's a family affair. My other sister does all the camera work. She shoots our content videos, which like I said before, we have a new one out called Zionism and Pan-Africanism, featuring Rabbi Yaakov Hadani. You have to check that out. My other older sister helps my younger sister with the videography because she's a professional videographer. It's a family thing, right? And so we're able to do a lot of things just within the family unit. And for a long time, we've been able to do it, whether there's funding or not. But we are, especially with the exponential increase of demand on IBSI since October 7th. It went up during the war in 2021, but way more these past few months. We can't meet all the needs. We can't meet all the demands at where we are now with our funding. We definitely need to increase what's coming into IBSI. And so that's where you can come in. So become a legacy builder, set up a monthly donation. It could be, you can set up $10 if that's all you can do, and make it monthly. We would greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate that. ibsi.org/donate. Again, every third Tuesday is the IBSI Pastors event where our CEO and founder hosts, and he goes into some deep stuff. So you guys want to, if you're a pastor, if you know a pastor, send it to him, tell him to come out. That's every third Tuesday. Subscribe to our Substack, ibsi.substack.com. check out our articles, check out our podcasts, and we're always go to ibsi.org/dates, and you can see where we're going to be, who we're going to be with. We have dates coming up now that we're still solidifying. I think our CEO is going to be in Dallas soon. We're in talks about going back out to Chicago, maybe at least one time before the year's over, maybe twice. California, we're working on a big Hanukkah concert, which I'm really excited to share more about that with you. There's a lot happening. Music, speaking, engaging, all that stuff. So please come out and see us, support us, and we'd love to see you soon. That's it for this week. We'll see you next week, same time, same place, same channels. Thank you all so very much. You have a good rest of your night.